Hey there, it's Mario here, and in this video you're gonna learn whether cardio is necessary for fat loss. Is cardio needed to optimize fat loss? And this has been a question that I'm getting a lot from guys all around the world. There's been articles written in hundreds of different languages saying that cardio is some kind of magical thing when it comes to losing fat. And not only that, I mean, it's said that you have to do cardio in order to burn fat. And also it's said that high intensity interval training, at least lately, has been like marketed as the kind of the magic pill tool that everybody should be using in order to get ripped, which is definitely very far from the truth, right? So what it comes down to when we're talking about fat loss. So for fat loss, we know that we need to be in a caloric deficit in order for us to lose fat, in order to force our body to lose fat. And if we want to retain muscle mass in the process, we want to do some form of strength training or resistance training in the gym, right? So we know that. How much fat can you burn per week? I mean, simply depends on how your current body fat level is, what's your current situation. So we kind of set that up. Okay, is it going to be 0.5% of body weight per week that we aim for, 1% or 1.5%, depending on how lean you are. So the leaner you are, the less you can actually burn per week because there's just less of that fat in order for the body to tap into, right? So going further, so now that we know what fat loss is, I mean, it comes down to simply caloric input, caloric output that can come in different ways. So cardio is simply a tool for extra caloric output, for extra caloric expenditure, right? For burning more calories. And it's not necessary, right? You don't need to do cardio. I mean, it's a tool like any other tool. You can simply get very, very lean if you just reduce the food intake, right? If you reduce the amount of calories you put in, you don't have to reduce the amount of calories you expand in order for you to lose fat. So that is very clear by now, and a lot of people are just simply getting lean with doing zero cardio, including myself. I got lean many, many different times without doing a minute of fucking cardio per week, right? And people are kind of shocked when they hear that. Well, it's true. I mean, you don't necessarily need to go out of your way to do cardio. But it is a useful tool. And why is it useful? Well, simply because you don't have to cut your calories from food so much if you're also adding a little bit of cardio. Now the question is, how do you balance like the intake of food and cardio, right? Because it's about balancing the two things. And let's say if you are doing strength training for 3-4 times a week, you don't want to end up doing 6 sessions of cardio of like 45 minutes or an hour in order for you to get all your caloric expenditure, because that will also interfere with the adaptations your body has towards strength training and retaining that muscle mass and just simply building new muscle mass. Because we know that adaptations toward endurance training, aka cardio, interfere with adaptations toward strength training. So it's kind of that analogy that your body can't serve two masters. You have to choose which one you want to primarily adapt to. And they're on a completely different side of the spectrum here. So one adaptation will interfere with adapting to another thing. So if you're strength training 3 times a week, and if you're doing endurance kind of cardio type of work for 6 times a week, you're not really a strength athlete, right? You're more of an endurance athlete doing strength on the side. And I see a lot of people falling into this trap. They're doing so much cardio that in the end, they're somewhere in that gray zone, right? They're not doing strength training, but they're also not optimizing for endurance. So they're nowhere. So they're not getting any correct benefits. So their body is just not optimizing for either one, and it's really hard to progress like that. So my kind of maximum that I would ever suggest would be about, if your goal is to obviously maximize the amount of muscle mass you retain, would be 2 sessions per week of about 30 minutes of steady state. Steady state is something where you're in that mid heart rate zone. Simply something like jogging, running would put you there, or like doing like elliptical machine. And obviously there's different types, as I just mentioned here. There's different types of cardio, and you want to make sure that you optimize and that you use the one that is, I guess, the most suitable for you. My suggestion would be something like a stationary bike or something very low impact, because I do a lot of strength training, and I'm assuming a lot of people watching this video will be doing a lot of kind of bodybuilding type of work. And for us, it's better not to do any high impact style of training, because it will prevent any extra damage to our connective tissue and to our joints. I mean, if you go jogging, I mean, there's a high chance that you're gonna tax your connective tissue, which in the end is gonna prevent you from lifting heavy on those days that you really need to do heavy squats or some other form of leg work. So The bottom line is you want to choose the lowest impact cardio that you can do, and you also want to minimize the amount. As I said, 1 or 2 sessions per week of about 20-30 minutes of steady state won't have a negative impact on your interference, at least, right? Anything above that, going into like 4, 5, 6 sessions, I would not recommend doing that, because it's simply because of that interference, and in general it takes so much fucking time to do, right? Think about it for a second, just simply from logistically and just looking at it from the time management perspective, that adding cardio takes more time to do, and it's a lot easier to eat less food than it's to also do more activity and eat more food. So you're trading off time for like using more time, right? It's kind of ridiculous, at least from a time management perspective. So it's a lot easier just to simply reduce the food intake and get your fat loss through that, get your caloric deficit from that. And another form of cardio that has been, as I mentioned here, has been marketed recently is the high intensity interval training. A lot of guys will fall into kind of this trap, and they're going to start doing sprinting, they're going to start doing like some crazy amounts of high intensity interval training, while not realizing that this type of training is not only dangerous in terms of like if you don't have the skill set you're going to get injured, but it also requires your body to recover for like a very long time. So it's almost the same as if you're doing gym training, in some cases even worse, right? So you want to minimize the amount of high intensity interval training you do, or here's an alternative you can do. You can simply apply something called metabolic resistance training, and that's my favorite way of doing cardio, where you simply use the compound lifts that you want to get good at from the gym, you combine them into circuits, so you do them one after another, do very high repetitions, very low weight and low rest period, which allows you to kind of get that practice with those lifts, work on your technique, and also burn a ton of calories. And also you'll be able to recover from that, because your body is used to those movements, right? The body gets that repeated bout effect, you know, it gets used to certain movements, so you get less muscle damage effect from them, so you can do them more frequently. So you can add a day of metabolic resistance training on an off day. That will allow you to burn extra calories, get good at those lifts, and that will also translate into your strength training. And now I mentioned something there, when to do cardio, and I would always suggest separating them, at least on doing them evening, afternoon, like very far from each other from the strength training, or even better, like the best, most optimal would be to do them on an off day, some day that you don't do any form of bodybuilding or strength training work. So that is pretty much all you need to know on cardio. I mean, it has been a topic of a lot of debates out there, and people are simply spitting out different kinds of protocols, different kinds of workouts, and it's kind of sad, I mean, to see people falling into these like, hey, 6-minute high intensity fucking workout as supposed to burn fat. I mean, it really comes down to the caloric deficit, and regardless of what kind of activity you do, it's simply a tool for you to get more of that caloric deficit. There's no kind of magical thing that's just gonna just burn fat by itself. If you're not in a deficit, you're not gonna burn fat. That's simply the truth. It's a law of thermodynamics. We can't go bypass that law any way we know by now. So definitely keep an eye on this and use cardio, as I said. Keep an eye on how much you will do and when and how you're going to implement that. If you have any questions on this, as always, leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to click subscribe below to support the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.